Donald Trump. A name known around the world, loved by some, criticized by others, but impossible to ignore. He's a man who built an empire, starred on television, became one of the most powerful figures in global politics, and forever changed how people see leadership and success. But before he was the 45th President of the United States, before the rallies, the controversies, and the fame, he was simply a young boy from New York City, a dreamer with an extraordinary belief in himself. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York. He was the fourth of 5 children in the Trump family. His father, Fred Trump, was a successful real estate developer, and his mother, Mary Ann, came from Scotland. From a young age, Donald grew up surrounded by ambition, construction, and the constant rhythm of business. His father built houses for middle-class families in New York, and Donald often watched him at work, fascinated by the power of creating something from nothing. But even then, Donald wasn't content with staying small. He wanted more. He wanted to build something that everyone in the world would notice. Teachers described him as energetic, confident, and sometimes rebellious. He didn't like being told what to do. He had his own ideas, his own goals, and he wasn't afraid to speak up. When he was a teenager, his parents sent him to a military academy, hoping that discipline and structure would help focus his energy. And it did. At the academy, he learned about leadership, competition, and winning, values that would later define his career. After finishing school, Trump went on to study economics at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, one of the best business schools in America. He didn't just study business, he dreamed of transforming it. He wanted to take his father's company to another level, from small housing projects to skyscrapers that would touch the New York skyline. And that's exactly what he set out to do. By the time he was in his 20s, Donald Trump had already begun making bold moves, taking risks, and stepping into the world of high-stakes real estate. He wasn't afraid of big numbers, big challenges, or big dreams. Whether you admire him or disagree with him, one thing is clear: Donald Trump became a symbol of ambition, confidence, and controversy. He's someone who always believed in himself, even when others doubted him. In this story, we'll explore how a young man from Queens turned his family business into a global brand, how he faced failure and bounced back, and how his journey led him all the way to the White House. This isn't just a story about politics, it's a story about ambition, risk, success, and resilience. It's a story about a man who refused to accept limits, and who changed the world, for better or worse, simply by being himself. When Donald Trump graduated from the Wharton School in 1968, he stepped into the world already hungry for something big. While many of his classmates went into traditional jobs, Trump decided to join his father's real estate business, a company focused mostly on middle-class housing in Brooklyn and Queens. But Donald didn't want to stay in the outer boroughs. He wanted Manhattan, the bright lights, the skyline, the city that never sleeps. He once said, "If you're going to think anyway, you might as well think big." And that's exactly what he did. In the 1970s, New York City was struggling. The economy was weak, crime was high, and many buildings were abandoned. But where most people saw danger and risk, Trump saw opportunity. He believed that if he could bring luxury and excitement back to Manhattan, he could make a name for himself, and turn a profit while doing it. His first major project was the Commodore Hotel, a massive building next to Grand Central Station. It was old, dark, and nearly empty. But Trump had a vision. He convinced the city government to give him tax breaks, made a deal with a major bank, and partnered with the Hyatt Corporation to transform it. When it reopened in 1980 as the Grand Hyatt Hotel, it was a shining success, modern, elegant, and profitable. New York took notice. Donald Trump had arrived. From there, he didn't stop. He moved on to bigger, bolder, flashier projects. He built the Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, a golden skyscraper with marble floors, luxury apartments, and his name in massive letters across the front. It became his signature, bold, confident, unmistakable. For Donald Trump, the Trump name itself became a brand, a symbol of wealth, success, and power. In the 1980s, Trump expanded beyond real estate. He bought casinos in Atlantic City, an airline called Trump Shuttle, and even a football team. Everywhere he went, he wanted his name to shine. He was no longer just a businessman, he was becoming a celebrity. He appeared in magazines, on talk shows, and in the media constantly. He was photographed next to stars, models, and politicians. Trump understood the power of image, that how people see you can be just as important as what you actually do. And so, he cultivated that image carefully, confident, rich, unstoppable. But behind the golden buildings and the headlines, things weren't always perfect. His businesses were growing fast, maybe too fast. He was taking on massive loans, and when the economy changed, the pressure began to mount. By the early 1990s, Trump faced serious financial trouble. His casinos were in debt, his airline was losing money, and banks were beginning to worry. The same newspapers that once called him a genius now questioned if he could survive. For the first time, Donald Trump's empire was shaking. Yet, in his own words, Trump said, "Sometimes by losing a battle, you find a new way to win the war." He refused to give up. He negotiated with banks, restructured his debts, and focused on rebuilding his brand. Even during his hardest times, he kept appearing in public, smiling, confident, refusing to show weakness. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Donald Trump was back. He launched new business ventures, licensed his name for buildings he didn't even own, and made money from simply being Trump. And then came a move that would change everything: television. When The Apprentice premiered in 2004, millions of people tuned in every week to see Trump sitting in his boardroom, judging contestants with his famous phrase, "You're fired." The show was a huge success. It turned him from a business celebrity into a global icon. People around the world now saw Trump not only as a businessman, but as a symbol of authority, wealth, and leadership. His confidence, his style, and his larger-than-life personality made him stand out in every way. He wasn't just part of American pop culture anymore, he was shaping it. By the time the show ended, Trump's name had become one of the most recognized in the world. And yet, deep down, he was still hungry for more. The man who had conquered real estate, television, and fame began to look towards something even bigger, something that would shock the entire world. He started to think about politics. The idea of Donald Trump running for president once sounded like a joke to many. But for him, it was the next logical step, another stage, another challenge, another empire to build. He had built skyscrapers, casinos, hotels, and a brand that defined an era. Now, he was ready to build something else, a movement. By the early 2000s, Donald Trump was already one of the most recognized names in America, not only for his skyscrapers and hotels but also for his personality. He had become more than a businessman, he was a brand, a symbol of wealth, ambition, and confidence. But few people imagine that this same man, known for luxury, reality TV, and famous quotes like, "You're fired," would one day become the President of the United States. After facing financial troubles in the 1990s, Trump made a strong comeback. He restructured his businesses, focused on licensing his name, and became a pop culture icon. He appeared in commercials, interviews, and talk shows. And then, in 2004, something happened that would make him a household name around the world: The Apprentice. The reality show featured young entrepreneurs competing for a chance to work with Trump. Each week, contestants faced business challenges, and Trump would dramatically fire one of them in the boardroom. The show was a massive hit. Millions of viewers watched it every week, fascinated by his confidence, his tough decisions, and his famous catchphrase. The Apprentice made Donald Trump even more popular. It wasn't just entertainment, it made him look like the ultimate boss, the symbol of success and power. People who had never read a business newspaper now knew who he was. To many Americans, Trump represented the dream of becoming rich and powerful through hard work and determination. During those years, he continued to build his image as a successful businessman and patriot. He often talked about how he loved America, how he wanted the country to be strong again, and how politicians were failing ordinary citizens. These ideas started to catch people's attention. By 2011, Trump began speaking more openly about politics. He questioned government policies, criticized trade deals, and often appeared on TV to express his opinions. He even hinted that he might run for president one day, though at the time, most people didn't take him seriously. They thought it was just another publicity move. But Trump was serious. Behind the scenes, he was studying politics, connecting with supporters, and building a following. He used social media, especially Twitter, to communicate directly with people, something no other politician had done in the same way. His tweets were short, emotional, and often controversial, but they reached millions of people instantly. He spoke in simple, direct language, the kind that many Americans could easily understand and relate to. Then, in June 2015, he shocked the world. Standing in the lobby of Trump Tower, he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States." The moment he said it, history changed. Trump's campaign was unlike any other. He didn't sound like a politician, and that was exactly why so many people liked him. He talked about jobs, borders, trade, and the idea of making America great again. That phrase, "Make America Great Again," became his slogan, his identity, and a rallying cry for millions. People started wearing red hats with the slogan printed on them, and rallies across the country drew enormous crowds. Many experts and journalists thought he had no chance. They laughed at his speeches and said he would never win. But Trump didn't care. He used criticism as fuel. He traveled across America, speaking directly to people who felt ignored, factory workers, small-town families, and those struggling economically. He promised to bring back jobs, protect American industries, and put the country first. Meanwhile, his opponents underestimated him. Trump's confidence, charisma, and understanding of the media gave him a huge advantage. Every time he made a bold or shocking statement, it dominated the news for days. He didn't need to spend millions on ads, the media gave him attention for free. In 2016, after months of rallies, debates, and global attention, something incredible happened. Against all predictions, Donald Trump won the Republican nomination. And then, on November 8, 2016, he did the impossible. He won the presidential election, defeating Hillary Clinton and becoming the 45th President of the United States. The result stunned the world. Supporters celebrated with tears of joy, while critics were in disbelief. For many, it was proof that in America, anything was possible. Even a billionaire businessman with no political experience could reach the highest office in the land. Trump's presidency would become one of the most talked about and controversial in modern history. But at that moment, on that cold January day in 2017, when he placed his hand on the Bible and took the oath of office, Donald J. Trump had achieved what few ever dreamed possible. He had gone from a young boy in Queens, watching his father build houses, to a global real estate tycoon, television star, and finally, the President of the United States. Whether people loved him or hated him, one thing was clear: Donald Trump had changed American politics forever. He had turned his fame into power, his ambition into history, and his slogan, "Make America Great Again," into one of the most memorable political movements of the 21st century. When Donald Trump took the oath of office on January 20, 2017, the world watched with mixed emotions. Some saw him as a bold outsider who would shake up the system, others feared chaos and division. But one thing was certain: America had never seen a president quite like Donald J. Trump. From the very beginning, Trump made it clear that he intended to do things his way. He wasn't a traditional politician, and he didn't want to become one. He preferred tweeting directly to the public rather than speaking through the media. His speeches were blunt, emotional, and full of powerful slogans. He promised to bring back American jobs, strengthen borders, and put the interests of the United States above everything else. One of his first major actions as president was to sign a series of executive orders that focused on immigration and trade. He wanted to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, restrict entry from certain countries, and renegotiate trade agreements that he believed were unfair to America. These decisions sparked enormous debates across the country. Supporters praised him for keeping his promises, critics accused him of dividing the nation. Economically, the first years of Trump's presidency saw strong growth. The stock market reached record highs, unemployment hit historic lows, and businesses benefited from major tax cuts. Many Americans felt optimistic about the economy. Trump often highlighted these achievements, saying that he had made America stronger than ever before. But his presidency was also marked by controversy, constant media battles, investigations, and political tension. Trump had a unique relationship with the press. He often called major news outlets fake news and accused journalists of being dishonest. His bold communication style, full of confidence and confrontation, changed how political leaders interacted with the media. Internationally, Trump's approach was just as unconventional. He met with world leaders like North Korea's Kim Jong-un, something no sitting U.S. president had ever done before. These meetings shocked the world and showed that Trump was willing to break diplomatic traditions to achieve results. He also pressured NATO allies to spend more on defense and withdrew from several international agreements, arguing that they were not in America's best interest. His "America First" policy became the symbol of his administration. To his supporters, it meant putting the needs of American citizens above global politics. To his critics, it represented isolation and nationalism. But love him or hate him, Trump's decisions always made headlines. Every tweet, every speech, every rally became front-page news. Then came one of the greatest challenges of his presidency, the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, the world faced a crisis unlike anything seen in decades. The virus spread rapidly, economies collapsed, and millions of lives were affected. Trump's handling of the pandemic was heavily debated. Some praised him for closing borders early and supporting vaccine development, others criticized his communication and approach to public health measures. As the 2020 election approached, the atmosphere in America was tense. The country was deeply divided, not just politically, but emotionally. Trump's rallies were still massive, full of energy and loyal supporters chanting, "For more years." But opposition to him was just as strong. When the results came in, Joe Biden was declared the winner. Trump refused to concede immediately, claiming that the election had been unfair. The months that followed were some of the most dramatic in U.S. history. Disputes over the election results, protests, and political unrest filled the headlines. On January 6, 2021, the U.S. Capitol was stormed by a crowd of Trump supporters, an event that shocked the world and became a defining moment of his presidency. Despite leaving office, Donald Trump's influence did not disappear. In fact, his political movement, often called Trumpism, remained powerful. Millions of Americans still saw him as their voice, someone who challenged the establishment and spoke directly to the people. He continued to hold rallies, give speeches, and suggest that his political journey might not be over. Trump's presidency changed American politics forever. He broke traditions, redefined communication, and showed that media and personality could be just as powerful as policy. To his followers, he was a hero who put America first and fought against corruption. To his critics, he was a divisive figure who tested the limits of democracy. But no matter what people believe, his impact is undeniable. He made history as the first president with no prior political or military experience, a businessman who climbed to the most powerful position in the world purely through charisma, determination, and the art of persuasion. When historians look back, they will see a presidency full of contradictions, economic success and political chaos, bold leadership and fierce opposition, loyal supporters and vocal critics. Donald J. Trump's time in office will be remembered as one of the most turbulent, fascinating, and transformative eras in American history. When Donald Trump left the White House in January 2021, it was not the quiet farewell of a defeated politician, it was the exit of a man who had changed the entire landscape of American politics forever. The world watched as he boarded Marine One for the final time, waving to a crowd of loyal supporters who still believed that his journey was far from over. And in many ways, it wasn't. Trump didn't fade into the background like most former presidents. He didn't disappear from the spotlight or retreat into silence. Instead, he did what he had always done best: he kept speaking, kept fighting, and kept shaping the national conversation. Within weeks of leaving office, Trump made it clear that he wasn't done. "We will be back in some form," he said. And his supporters believed him. In the months that followed, Trump continued to hold massive rallies across the United States. The energy was still there, thousands of people waving flags, wearing red hats, chanting his name. It was as if the campaign had never ended. He used these events to criticize the new administration, to question political elites, and to remind everyone that his movement, the Make America Great Again movement, was still alive and powerful. Trump also launched his own social media platform, Truth Social, after being banned from Twitter and other major sites. For him, it was more than just a communication tool, it was a statement of independence. He wanted to create his own space, free from censorship, where he could connect directly with millions of followers. It was another example of how Trump turned obstacles into opportunities. Financially and personally, Trump remained a dominant figure. His businesses, hotels, golf courses, and real estate projects, continued to operate, and his brand remained strong among his supporters. Despite numerous legal challenges, investigations, and controversies, he kept his image of resilience. For every criticism thrown his way, there was a loyal voice ready to defend him. Politically, Trump transformed the Republican Party into something deeply influenced by his personality and style. Candidates endorsed by him often won elections, and his approval within the conservative base stayed remarkably high. Even those who disagreed with him publicly couldn't ignore his influence. The Trump era didn't end with his presidency, it evolved into a lasting movement. In interviews and speeches, Trump often reflected on his time in office with pride. He spoke about the booming economy, the strong borders, the peace agreements, and his tough stance on China. He framed his presidency as a time of strength and prosperity, a golden age that, in his eyes, was unfairly cut short. His narrative was simple but powerful: he had fought for the people, and the system had fought against him. Meanwhile, discussions about his legacy filled newspapers, documentaries, and university classrooms. Some historians compared him to populist leaders throughout history, individuals who rose from outside the political system and connected directly with the masses. Others argued that he had changed how democracy itself functioned, blurring the lines between politics, entertainment, and celebrity culture. Trump's story became a modern American epic, the tale of a man who built an empire, conquered media, became the leader of the free world, and refused to back down even after leaving power. His ability to dominate headlines long after his presidency showed the scale of his influence. Whether loved or hated, Donald Trump remained impossible to ignore. Even today, his name sparks strong emotions. For some, it represents freedom, patriotism, and rebellion against corruption. For others, it symbolizes division, anger, and chaos. But no matter which side people stand on, they all agree on one thing: Donald Trump left a mark that will not fade anytime soon. As of now, he continues to play an active role in American politics, teasing the possibility of another run for office, attending rallies, and speaking at conservative conferences. Each appearance reignites the same fire, the same energy, the same belief among millions of supporters that his story isn't finished yet. His journey, from a young real estate developer in New York City to a global political icon, remains one of the most extraordinary stories of modern times. It's a story about ambition, controversy, resilience, and the power of personality. Whether one sees him as a hero or a villain, Donald J. Trump's life is a reminder that success often comes to those who dare to be different, those who refuse to follow the rules and instead, create their own. And perhaps that's his greatest legacy of all, to challenge the system, to believe in one's vision, and to never stop fighting for what you believe in, no matter the cost. Because, love him or hate him, Donald Trump didn't just live through history, he made it.